This episode of the Disruption Lab is taped in front of a live studio audience. I'm particularly excited to have, this is a different format than what we usually do for the Disruption Lab. Usually it's a one-on-one conversation, but because we've got these two amazing co-founders here with us tonight, we decided to change the format a little bit. Guys, I'm just gonna jump straight in. Most people, and I've experienced this with you guys, having been through the Social Venture Studio cohort and having had the opportunity to see you guys talk to a lot of people and the experience that people have had, but most people don't realize that one of the biggest barriers to escaping abuse or entering treatment is a pet. What was the moment that you guys realized that you had to solve this problem?
Yeah, Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, happy to. First of all, thanks for having us here. Really honored to be here. Really honored to be part of Social Venture Studio and anything we can do to help support. You know, we're always down for that. You know, a lot of we didn't know either. Everything that you just described myself for sure, and everything that led to us understanding the scale and scope of this crisis was very serendipitous. You know, Matt and I, you know, quick background, we built companies before together. We consider ourselves problem solvers. We like building new things. We like doing that together. We were kicking around a few different business plans after leaving a prior company, and just happened to hear on KCUR an interview on Steve Kraski's show, interviewing a person that worked at a local domestic violence agency. And it was when that person said that 50% of the time that a person calls their hotline wanting to come in and get help, and they find out they can't bring their pet, they hang up the phone and are forced to stay in an abusive and life-threatening environment. It really stopped us in our tracks. I mean, think about that. 1 of every 2 people that call their hotline asking for help is forced to stay in a situation that they want to get out of, and it made complete sense to us. It wasn't something we were aware of. It wasn't something that we knew prior to listening to that interview. But as soon as we heard it, it made complete sense. And then when we dug a little deeper and heard some of the other statistics that were equally as shocking, we really just felt compelled to try to help.
How did you come up with the solution then? Right, because I think we've talked about the various ways that this problem could be tackled, and there's a lot of maybe barriers, you know, capital barriers to create, you know, more pet-supported facilities that are maybe adjacent to these things and so on. So how did you guys come up with the idea of there's a technology solution to this issue and there's a way to enable this ecosystem of support around how this gets solved?
Yeah, I think we were fortunate that, you know, our prior endeavor, we spent 6.5 years building a large piece of technology for the entertainment industry. And we had to build all different, you know, types of user experiences. It had to be highly confidential. We had studied a lot of different technologies, you know, everything from RFID management to user creation tools to PDF parsers, and then marketplaces as well, because there was fashion components to that. And immediately upon hearing this, the barriers were, you know, a social service agency, it's hard enough to run and operate and take care of your clients just in that physical facility with all the demands and everyone who's you know, working tirelessly, wearing multiple hats. So the thought of creating an on-site animal shelter, it became apparent that was kind of daunting. So creatively thinking like, well, what if there was a solution that could just source foster homes in the community? And that's, I mean, kind of immediately was like, what if we just approached this from a technological aspect instead of a brick and mortar solution? And Andy and I were talking on the phone, and he drove out to my house, and I was like, let's just storyboard this solution. We have a good idea of how this could work. You know, completely naive, but at the same time, just, all right, how can we approach this with a fresh set of eyes, completely outside of the world of both animal services and human social services? And then contacting the CEO and the director of grants, who was interviewed during that kind of KCUR episode, just said, you're going to think we're crazy, but we listened to your interview, and we have an idea that we'd like to present to you, and that's kind of where it started.
So, I mean, it's fascinating to me, you know, when we talk about lived experience being the root of entrepreneurship in so many ways, and, you know, how do you get to your why, and people that have those lived experiences and so on. But sometimes it isn't that. Sometimes it is fresh eyes on a problem that's been maybe sitting there forever and ever. What's it been like for you guys sitting maybe outside the lived experience realm of what's happening in, I mean, you guys are at the intersection of houselessness, domestic violence, substance abuse, animal welfare. I mean, you guys have talked to me before about not understanding the pressure on both sides of this wasn't just a domestic violence situation, there's pressure on the animal welfare side. But what's it been like coming into that with fresh eyes versus coming into that deep with the knowledge of how it works today and some of those other kind of things?
Yeah, that's a really great way to frame it, because initially those fresh eyes helped us identify a new solution through a technology that we had to create. And so there was a lot of benefits to that, but the more we got into it, we knew we needed to understand, you know, the Matt and I, the way that we build companies, the way that we build technology is a little different. We want to make sure we understand, you know, those people on the ground, those people that are answering those hotline calls, the case managers, the clinicians. We are determined to build software that works the way that they need it the first time that they pick it up. And so we knew we needed to understand not only the breadth and scope of that crisis, but how these agencies would need it to work. And so when we learned very quickly that it wasn't unique, this crisis wasn't unique to domestic violence agencies and advocates for survivors, but human social services of all types, whether it's behavioral health, mental health, substance use treatment disorder, housing advocacy groups, veterans advocacy groups, all of these social services experiencing this same barrier, we knew we had to create something that had to be not only extremely powerful, extremely confidential because of HIPAA compliance and regulatory compliance and just general safety, but it had to be flexible enough to work across the spectrum of human social services. And then when we fold in the animal welfare side of things, and we're looking at you know, those organizations often in communities at that time being the sole focus of a person in crisis or a human social service agency reaching out to say, hey, can you help in this instance? And they're saying, we're already overrun with unowned pets. So that kind of became full circle. At that point, we felt a responsibility and felt compelled to build this platform. And to do that, then we had to kind of shift from that outside view to really becoming experts in how crisis care, safety net, advocacy programming on the human side and on the pet side had to work. So then we had to really educate ourselves. And fortunately, that community on both sides of the equation, human side and pet side, were extremely welcoming and extremely gracious with their time and helping us educate ourselves to where we were experts. And now they're looking to us to say, okay, we've got the platform, here's the situation we've never had occur before, what should we do? And then we can help them work through that.
Yeah, I imagine all sides are hungry for a solution. I mean, this is just a problem that's got to get solved, and they've been staring at each other for a long time trying to figure it out. So I'm here with Matt Krentz and Andy Bond, the co-founders of Besty BnB. Matt, tell us a little bit about how the platform works. For those that haven't heard of Besty BnB, tell us a little bit about what do you guys do and how's the process work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, at a super high level, our agency partners have described us as a HIPAA-compliant, highly confidential Airbnb for pets. So what does that mean exactly? We build crisis care safety net programs within social service agencies and animal welfare agencies. So, for instance, using domestic violence, intimate partner violence agencies as an example. Historically, when we first learned about this crisis back in 2019, that's when we heard that interview. And just to piggyback off what Andy said real quick, like the solution we presented was a very high level, 50,000 foot, would this work? And then it was an entire year of interviewing case managers, client advocates, hotline people. Like, the best thing we could do is listen and take notes, listen and take notes, listen and take notes. And there were so many amazing people along that journey who are in the trenches day in and day out helping people and sharing their stories, but also sharing all their barriers. And that's what we wanted to know. Give us all the reasons why this won't work. Give us all the reasons that you've encountered why someone won't come in. And then we take that and kind of mold it into what was, eventually became Besty BnB. And so when we go to an agency who does not have the ability to have an on-site pet shelter, and there's all kinds of reasons. There's money, there's breed restrictions, they can't change the physical footprint of their location that's rented or leased to them. So we create a virtual pet program. So within an hour, we onboard and train their entire staff. They have a secure account that they can log into. They can create a confidential client profile. Within the creation of that, they can use mobile apps or web apps. That allows the client to put some confidential information if they're in shelter with them or if they're remote. They sign a release of liability, a waiver and claims. That's a big reason why a lot of these organizations don't create pet programs, because they don't know how to protect themselves. Once they do that, they create then a pet profile that takes 2 minutes. So within a 45-minute period, and I'll get to a story about that in a second, they can have an entire program up and running, create a client profile, a pet profile, and then they can log into our secure network, and then it turns into a very Airbnb-like experience where anyone in the community who has signed up as a foster home, so we handle all the signups, they're directed to our site, they go through a 5-step application process, what type of pets they take care of, the number of pets, images of their household, what their experience is, do they have the ability to administer medication, do they provide transportation, all the way down to, are they going to donate their services? Are they going to charge a fee? Everyone has to go through a background check to make sure there's no history of abuse whatsoever towards people or pets. Once they're approved, they appear in this secure network. Now within a community, all of a sudden that one foster home can help Hope House Domestic Violence Agency, Johnson County Mental Health Department, Pet Resource Center of Kansas City, St. Michael's Veterans Center. So as soon as one account set up and one group of foster homes is created, then anytime there's a crisis situation, other social service agencies are directed to us, and we slowly start populating secure accounts across the community. Everyone feeds off that pool of foster homes. So for instance, Johnson County Mental Health Department was one of the first mental health departments in the country to create a pet advocacy program through us. We did a 6-month kind of survey with their case managers, launched the program. It was originally scheduled to launch in August of 23. They called us in I think it was June or early July 23 and said, we have a situation, can we start this earlier than expected? And within 45 minutes, we trained their staff, created their account, and placed a pet for a client of theirs within 45 minutes.
All less than an hour, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the best use case. Since then, they're one of our most active users, and they're averaging about 6,000 safe nights. Just last year, they provided 6,000 safe nights for patients with a 100% return to owner rate. And that was just one client.
So now that's what's really different about this than, say, pet fosters in general. I mean, as a pet foster, you get the animal and you're hoping someone comes along that wants the animal. In this instance, this is a return to owner situation. I mean, and you're 100% in terms of what you've seen with Johnson County specifically with that program?
Yeah, across our platform, our return to owner rate is still at 100%, something that we're really proud of. There's a lot of reasons for that. One of the main ones is, when a person in crisis, they go out of their way to make sure that their pet is taken care of before they take care of themselves. And so they go to great lengths to make sure that their pet is safe. And we honor that, and we let them know, the first information that they receive from whatever service provider they're getting direct services from is, your pet is always your pet. We built some proprietary tools that, while they won't know the identity or location of the person that's caring for their pet, and vice versa, that person that's caring for the pet doesn't know the identity or location of that person in crisis, but they can stay connected, and that person can stay involved in their pet's care. They can get picture and video updates. They can they can weigh in. If the pet is taking some time adjusting to the new home and maybe isn't eating well, they can help with ideas on how to solve that. And so they stay engaged in that pet's care, and they're working. And we've received, not from the people in crisis, because we don't know them either, but from the case managers and the admins that run Besty BnB at these agencies. They give us feedback and say, hey, this person wanted me to let you know that the best part of their day was when they logged into their account and were able to just scroll through pictures of their pet, and knowing that they were working towards getting over whatever issues they were facing, getting whatever help they needed. Getting that pet back was a big incentive, and so they're working to do that. And so that anonymity helps kind of break down some implicit biases that might be present of someone wondering, well, does this person really deserve a pet? And they're starting to understand, like, yes, that everybody deserves a pet. Pets are 97% of people in the population at large consider their pets part of their family. And we're very proud to be part of a lot of people that are shifting that mindset of, like, yeah, we would never expect somebody to get help for themselves at the expense of their kids and abandon their kids. Pets are no different.
So to that end, I'm curious, what kind of maybe cultural misconceptions or misunderstandings or cultural myths have you guys run into when you're explaining what you guys do that you've had to maybe overcome about, does this person even, things like you just said, does this person even deserve to have a pet?
One of the big ones is the same thing that you expressed to start the show, and kind of in our first kind of answer is, there's a lot of people that still just don't know that this crisis exists. They don't know that people are foregoing housing or foregoing behavioral health or any type of general health services, or survivors not leaving an abusive situation because of their pet. And so that's one of the big parts of our platform, is just education overall, educating the community of, yes, this is happening in your community. It doesn't discriminate across any lines, socioeconomic, racial. This is pervasive. It happens everywhere, and here's a new way that you can help. And back kind of to the point of, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of really great people who are out fostering for unowned pets, and that's a very, very needed service. It's a very needed thing. Fostering for an owned pet is much different. A lot of the things that are obvious, there's no chance of foster failing, because that pet is going back to its person when they're ready. But it's just also, it's a way to help. What we realized is, you can't care for the pet as a whole, an animal as a whole, if you don't take into account the human that's in that pet's life at the other end of that leash, and vice versa. You can't talk about whole care for a person without taking into account what does their pet needs, and what does that pet mean to them in their daily lives. And so really being able to go out and educate communities on, this is a barrier, this is a crisis, here's a new way to help, has been really influential in communities, and just seeing them come together in a shared responsibility of taking care of those in need in the community.
I always thought I was the crazy one. I've got a dog, and anybody who knows me knows that Milo is, like the center of my universe in so many ways. And I always thought I was the crazy one that, like, if somebody gave me an ultimatum, like, this or your pet, I'd be like, it's my pet. Like, thanks, but no thanks. But that's everyone. I mean, that's just such this makes so much sense. The first time I ever heard you guys explain this, I think we were at a social venture meetup, and I heard you guys explain what you do. I was like, duh, like, this is so obvious that people would want to do this. I'm curious, Andy, you said something previously about maybe people's behavior in program that have this opportunity where they know the pet is safe, or they know, they have the opportunity to see this and so on. Have you gotten any feedback from those programs on maybe outcomes improving, or people's acceptance of the program that they're in, being maybe more motivated to get back to their pet, that kind of thing? Have you gotten any feedback along those lines?
Absolutely. We're working on a business case right now with our partners at University Health. They were the second behavioral health department or provider in the country behind Johnson County Mental Health Centers to create pet advocacy through Besty BnB. But they're also looking at it as a broader solution for other parts of and other sectors of the hospital that are experiencing that same barrier. But what they've seen is from those patient outcomes, people that they know were not coming in are now coming in. People that were coming in but not completing programs are now completing programs because they don't have that pull of I've got to leave because my friend that could watch my pet for the weekend
the anxiety
goes back to work.
Yeah.
And so they're able to focus on their recovery. And we've heard, the on-site shelters are awesome, and for agencies that can have them, there are tools within Besty BnB that help enhance the administration of those on-site pet facilities and co-sheltering. There's some people and there's some pets that just aren't well suited, at least maybe initially. So a person might I need a break. I'm not going to surrender my pet, but I need somebody that can take care of this pet for 7 days, 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever the case might be, while I work on myself and get to a spot where then I can feel where I am prepared to care for my pet. And so being able to meet those people where they are, fulfill the needs that they have in that moment is one of the reasons that we were so dedicated to building the platform to be as flexible as it is, because it's not one size. Pet advocacy, crisis care safety net programming on the human side or the pet side isn't one size fits all. It's like one size is different in every scenario almost. And so just having that flexibility, but at the end of the day, that person knowing that my pet is safe, my pet is mine, and my pet is going to be there, is definitely improving outcomes for our social service providers.
So not only improving the numbers of people that are getting the treatment or getting the help, but improving efficacy of what that even looks like in program for the people that have that opportunity.
Correct.
Yeah, it's amazing. How do you guys balance, so you were in Social Venture Studio, and we've talked about this a lot. How do you guys balance this? You guys have built a technology platform that's really impacting human lives, and at a root, Maslow's basic needs kind of level in a lot of different ways. How do you guys balance the entrepreneurial urgency with the sense of responsibility around this being a social impact program and product that you have? How's that? Has it been hard for you to make that balance of we're building a business, this needs to be a business in so many ways because it's a tech platform and what we're doing, but at the same time, we don't want to stray from this, no pun intended, I didn't realize stray, right? Wow, I use these words all day. How do you do that balance? How's that been for you guys?
I would say it hasn't been hard because we've been kind of laser focused on balancing the mission with the business. But we have been, it doesn't mean that it's not without a lack of opportunities coming our way that's the inappropriate fit. Or just not the right fit. Dollars, and you're building a company and you're always looking for investments, you're always looking for opportunities. But if the investments aren't aligned and the investors are not aligned with the core mission, then it's just not the right partnership. And so I think, being part of the Social Venture Studio program, hearing stories and kind of intentionally thinking about that, it's helpful because, as long as we don't stray from our core mission, which is keeping people and pets together, and, providing tools so our direct service providers can do their job more efficiently and at scale. If a certain portion of the population that they're intended to help won't walk through the front door, then they're not able to do their job efficiently. So it's a problem. It's a fun problem to have to think about and constantly tweak and try to solve. But that's where the creativity, that's from an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's something that hasn't been done. There's been no program like this. So that's fun because we like a challenge. We like problem solving. and as we grow and scale this, we just have to keep that mission, and our goals in check, because you can do both. And I think that's what we're learning through the program, is you can have a successful, profitable, growing business while still doing very good for the community, and never at the expense of the person in crisis. Like, that's one thing we're very proud of. Anybody who's in crisis who we've helped serve, not one of them had to pay for any services. And as a company, if there's an agency that can't afford our services, we still give it to them at no cost to make sure they can get that program up and running, knowing that we're talking to potential sponsors and philanthropic foundations to help either subsidize or cover those costs until they can put it as a line item in their budget. So you have to get very creative, as all entrepreneurs do. Independent filmmakers, artists, creators, everyone has to turn every dime into a dollar and stretch any resources they have much further than those who don't have to think along those lines. But we're fortunate that in our past endeavors and with Besty BnB, we're extremely careful and strategic about those types of decisions.
As a person who's had the opportunity to mentor a lot of startups and have people bring a lot of ideas to me and say, what about this idea, or what about this company I want to do, and so on. Anytime somebody brings me a marketplace model, I kind of roll my eyes like, oh shit, another marketplace. I don't think you understand how hard a marketplace is, because you're not just building something for one side of it. You have to build something for both sides that's meaningful and figure out a way to bring them together. I think about what you guys are doing now, and I think, okay, the complexity of one side of this marketplace, systems, nonprofit world, legacy, manual just the complexity of the various organizations you're working with on one side is one thing, but then on the other side of the equation, you got the same thing. What's been like the integration challenge? Like, how have you guys overcome that idea that it's not like you're just tying system A to system B or market supply and demand? You're integrating into systems or processes that are probably with organizations that have been stood up for a while, been operating for a while in a very how do we get this done kind of way, without a lot of the investment of, oh, we've got an API for that, or we've got, that's easy. We just click this button and you guys are in, kind of thing. How's that been for you?
It was a challenge. When you've brought this up before, the thought that pops in my mind is, if it were easy, somebody else would have already done it, and that's very much, I think, true here. But we had a lot of really smart, passionate people willing to open up their doors and give us time to educate us on what their specialty was, on whether they were on the supply side or the demand side, from a marketplace standpoint. And we were able to take that and digest it, and then kind of get the counterpoint and get the expertise there, and really just kind of, and it took a long time, and it was, very, very much a little bit like a Rubik's Cube. You think you're getting one side, and then you're looking, or at least for me, doing Rubik's Cubes. But the mission and the impact and having that dedication to solving that, and then, as Matt said, just the entrepreneurial spirit and taking on that challenge and wanting to solve it, knowing that we were not just solving it for ourselves or for the gratification of coming up with this new technology, but it was really going to impact real people and real pets and make a difference in somebody getting help or not getting help. And then the education piece and being able to have really difficult conversations with our own kids about whether it's intimate partner violence and the appropriateness of relationships, or housing discrimination, or all of these topics that you aren't eager to sit down around the dinner table to talk
kids,
about
let's sit
with
down
your
and talk about
kids.
homelessness. Yeah.
It's a little easier to approach. That doesn't mean it's not important to have those conversations.
Yep.
You have to. It's a little easier to approach that from the lens of a pet when you're approaching it from that. And so having those things as the focus makes the hard part of trying to figure out how this is all going to work together, it makes it all worth it, and it keeps you going. And so on those hard days when you kind of feel like you just keep hitting dead ends, knowing the impact it was going to have was that kind of that motivator to keep going, and trusting in each other that we could figure it out. And you know, certainly one that I think, being co-founders, and the working relationship that we have, the personal relationship that we have, was a big benefit of just being able to, you know, if I was driving down a road that was not right, and Matt could come in and say, like, no, we need to go this way, and then that's the right decision, and then we keep moving forward from there.
Yeah, I want to get back to the co-founding piece in a minute. Before we do that, how surprising was the response on the animal welfare side of this to you guys? Because when you started, the focus was really on the human services side and how do you improve that. But I mean, in watching you guys over the last year, and the response on the other side of the equation, on the animal welfare side, seems to be like massive in terms of their need and response to this.
Yeah, we were a little uncertain. We knew animal welfare was a key part of this as far as providing support and services, but we didn't know how great the need was within their own organizations for an owned pets crisis care program. We were going to build it strictly, after hearing this, for domestic violence agencies, and if it was a solution that only served those organizations and that population, that would have been fine. Before we wrote a line of code, we were educated to all the other social service agencies that could also benefit from this. So we were set to do that. And then, I think it was when we first connected with, Humane Society of the United States at the time, now called Humane World for Animals. And we were connected with the head of their national shelter and rescue division. And quite frankly, we weren't sure what the response was going to be. And she said, we need more programs like this. We need to find new fosters. You found a way to tap into volunteers who are very concerned and compassionate about the people in their community. And they didn't know that by helping a pet, they can help that organization they volunteer for. So when she kind of brought us in and said, we want you to come speak at our annual Animal Care Expo, and we need to start telling the animal welfare community about your solution, we quickly realized that the best thing we could do to present our solution to them was bring us in through the lens of animal welfare, and when you get calls, because on a weekly basis they're getting multiple calls from social service agencies, help this become a shared responsibility, and then you're going to start seeing less pets owner surrendered. You're going to start getting more engagement within the community, and you're also going to potentially open up new donor dollars because you're helping humans. And so that conversation kind of organically started, but at first we kind of just had to jump in and hope that we'd be welcomed into that community,
Right.
but we did not know at first at all.
Yeah,
it's a little scary.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
It was. And they really educated us to the fact that both sides were kind of telling us the kind of the same story, just from a different perspective. But what we learned, what they taught us, was they were looking for ways to work together, and they saw Besty BnB as the hub to kind of bridge that gap between human social services and animal welfare, to work in a way that either wasn't efficient or wasn't available prior to that. And so that was just, again, another stroke that kind of in our journey that really told us we have to keep going.
Now I want to make sure people understand this is not a Kansas City solution. I appreciate more than that you are a Kansas City company, but this is not a Kansas City. You guys have scaled this now. What's the reach?
We are currently working with 55 different agencies in 19 states, soon to be 56, with a new agency based out of Orlando that will be coming on board. No, we're very proud to build this. We intentionally built this from Kansas City. That was one of the kind of the pillars. We know that there's a lot of smart technologists here. We know there's a lot of entrepreneurism. There's a lot of social impact focused programs, everything that you're doing. So we were very proud to have built this here. And it also was very helpful before we told anybody what we were doing. We knew we wanted to kind of build a blueprint for how this platform can be adopted in any community in a way that they can then make it their own and have that shared responsibility that Matt mentioned. And Kansas City is very unique. You know, we've got 2 states divided by a street. We've got urban, suburban, rural, and a lot of really smart, passionate advocates out there that were willing to listen to us. And so we were able to very quietly launch with 7 domestic violence agencies, 3 behavioral health providers, substance use treatment, housing organizations, and a veterans community group, and really kind of hone that blueprint before we really took it out from there. And so people call it the Kansas City model, the Kansas City blueprint, when we're talking about coalition building in other communities, which is something that is very fulfilling to us on a personal level. But it really was the right place to build something like this, and kind of that, whether it was us being crazy or just having the audacity to think we were the 2 to try to pull this off. Having Kansas City as the backdrop is a big part of that story.
I don't know if I want to sit here and say, Kansas City is the perfect market to launch something like this because we have so many social crises going on, but, we'll take it, right, at this point.
Yeah. That's one thing that we're not unique in. It could have been anywhere, but doing it from here is something that we're very proud of. You
guys consider yourselves tech founders, innovators, social entrepreneurs, somewhere in between? How do you guys think about yourselves in terms of what you're doing right now?
Just like problem solvers and creators. We like to there's a lot of daydreaming, a lot of creating. The technology side of it's fun. We're fortunate we work with great, smart technologists because they're the ones who are going to do the coding and architecture and advise us and steer us. And I think we're good at surrounding ourselves with people who are, smarter and more capable. And we've built a pretty amazing team, on the technology side, on the social services side, just people we trust. The first person we hired, Zoe, is just tremendous. She ran the pet advocacy program at Rosebrook Center, here locally, a domestic violence agency, and was nationally recognized for the pioneering work she did as one of the only pet-inclusive domestic violence agencies in the Midwest, definitely in Kansas City at the time. And so she brought us in and really provided some insight, and then ultimately was like, hey, I think what you guys are doing, I could share my expertise and we could do this across the entire country instead of just one location. But it's smart people who are also have a pioneering spirit, who are like, hey, this is something pretty cool and innovative. And the same with the technologists at 27 Global that we work with. People who believe in the mission. It's, when you're creating something that people aren't excited about or they're not passionate about, I think that's when you're really in trouble, and yeah. Whatever that might be,
For sure.
Whether it is technology or in the arts or, if you're coaching a team, people have to buy into what the ultimate goal is and what your mission is. And I think we are fortunate that a lot of people are, they see the results. I mean, we all see it, like in real time, we see numbers of people who got help that otherwise might not be here today.
I actually had this conversation with someone today about purpose not being a requirement, but certainly a driver for some of the success. And I think you guys have embodied that in terms of the people that have surrounded you. The purpose-driven nature of what you guys do is the whole ecosystem. It's all just purpose-driven.
Well, and that's the common thread. It's nice in a lot of ways to be able to sit in multiple boxes that you described and not just be pigeonholed into one. But there is that thread of the social impact that weaves through all of those. And so having that cohesiveness and having that passion of purpose behind it is really integral and lets us kind of play in a few different sandboxes.
Andy, you mentioned this earlier. I want to come back to it now. What's it meant for you guys to have been co-founders previously? Could you guys have, what would have been different about this if this was your first rodeo?
We'd have wasted a lot more money. We're always learning something, week to week and how to get more efficient. But it's after building the last company and working 6.5 years prior to Besty BnB just on a technology startup, without saying like, okay, you need to do this, I need to do this, we just kind of do it and fall in a cadence, and we know what our strengths are, we know when it's important to bounce things off each other, we know like which lanes that we need to kind of be in charge of steering and being accountable for, but there's always a real natural intersection and overlap where we're like, all right, I really need your eyeballs in this. What's your schedule look like? Because before it goes out, like we both need to, discuss this big decision. So I mean, it's rewarding. I think the first endeavor, I mean, you run into challenges and you run into, how fast you can waste. But funding can go so quickly. I mean, and even not on purpose, not even like with frivolous things, but, not having all of your requirements, planning, like not having a clear roadmap of where the technology needs to go. If you're trying to figure it out, like, while you're building it, some of that has to take place, but a lot of that can be eliminated by just planning. It's like going into a film production and you're writing the script, as you're going. I mean, you're just going to lose money. You're going to lose money. It's just like you need a blueprint that's very crystal clear. And we went into Besty BnB with an extremely detailed, 150 working wireframes. Like, so we knew exactly what we were getting into. The technologists knew what they had to build. So I think we were just more prepared.
Yeah, I think the prior experience as co-founders was crucial, but him being my co-founder is also just as crucial. So it's not just the experience; it has to be the right fit and the right mix, because the level of trust that has to be there is just it's really paramount.
So founding a company that deals with human trauma has got to be like an emotional burden as well, right? It's not just we're building a company, this is going well, like we're watching revenues, we're watching accounts, we're watching, the things happen. There's like this emotional burden or responsibility that goes with that. What have you learned about like the leadership and resilience required to operate in a space like that?
We learn a lot from the advocates and the clinicians that are administering the software, the Besty BnB admins at these agencies, and people in the veterinary space that are seeing this on the front lines. And there's a lot of burnout and there's a lot of turnover there. And one of the things that they tell us is now that they have Besty BnB, they feel like they get small wins. They got somebody in that wasn't going to come in. They got that pet into a caregiver's home. And while they still have all of this trauma and all of the bad stuff that they are submersed in every day, they got to go home that day with a win. And that really resonated with me of just keeping perspective. So on those days when it gets hard, or when a difficult story is relayed, or we know something is a true emergent situation, and we're trying to help offer support to an agency, remembering to have some perspective on what the alternative is, and that we didn't create the bad situation, and we're just trying to help a person and a pet lead a richer life together. Helps get you over that, and not over it in terms of you don't think about it, but it just flips that perspective to know, like, in a perfect world, we would be put out of business because there's no one in crisis, and we'd figure out what we're going to go build next. But that's not the world we live in.
I think we're ways away from that one. Yeah,
so while those crises exist, and while people and pets are subjected to that, if we can be a part of a lot of people that are pulling for them to get them into a better spot, then that helps with that perspective.
What's the role, and maybe you guys haven't crack the code here as much, but like, what's the role that data plays in this whole space? In terms of both sides looking for maybe more data that can help inform how they operate, but then also, the role that you guys play in the middle of this. Where's your head around the data, the access, how your partners think of those things as well?
Yeah, it's super important for a lot of different reasons, and some of them are ones that you might not think. It's just, it could be access to funding current environment notwithstanding, an organization gets a grant to try to help with pets, and they have no solution to really effectively report on, well, what impact did we, how many people did we help, how many pets did we help, what type of pets were those pets in need of veterinary care, did they get veterinary care, all of those sorts of things. So the data is very important on just a day-to-day operation level for a lot of our agency partners, but then just in communities in general, and just seeing what the result of that shared responsibility can be, and how many more families stayed together, and so the data is very, very powerful. And the benefit of the way that we structured this is that that collection of very powerful data, we can work with our agency partners to figure out how that data needs to be sliced and served to be most meaningful for them. We know how it is meaningful for us, but kind of back to our core philosophy, we don't presume to think we're smart enough to know how agency A needs their data to work versus agency B. So we just want to provide them with, here's the data, what's meaningful for you, let's go figure that out together. And that's been a very productive approach for us. But as in this world today, Kevin, you said before, like, that sooner or later, every entrepreneur is going to have like a social component to what they're trying to do, and everybody knows data is part of that. And so we just feel really fortunate to be working in a space where that data can be meaningful, and we can help make it more powerful for the agencies that we're trying to serve.
All right, at some point in time, you guys are going to have to run a query for me that because I have a hypothesis that people who own my kind of dog probably have more emotional and mental trauma because of that type of breed of animal. And I'm going to have you guys run that query at some point in time and see if I'm right, because I'm betting my animal is going to drive me crazy. That's what I'm betting on right now.
You're not the first owner of that particular breed that has asked us for that same
Yeah,
reassurance.
I'll bet. So if you guys could redesign the trauma response, the crisis response system in the United States from scratch, based on what as outsiders coming in, learning about it, having the perspective that you have, if you guys could redesign it from the ground up right now, what would be the biggest change that you would make in terms of how things run today?
Man, that's a real easy one, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're here for, is ask the easy
like
questions.
that we finally got to these softballs.
Yeah. Oh, did I? No, I know I never told you there'd be softball. Yeah, I probably did.
No, that's
I think the importance of just having flexible models and flexible solutions, knowing that every person is different. Every person with their family unit is different. And then you put the added stress of a crisis situation on that person, and across the board, I think Human Social Services and Trauma Response do a great job of this, focused on the person, but taking that more holistic look on what are the other factors around this. What are some of the other root causes that might be present. And let's take that into account, and maybe we start reaching out for help from other organizations and working more collaboratively and collectively earlier in situations. And it's not that they don't want to do that, it's just there's a lot of barriers to being able to do that. So removing a lot of those layers and removing the barriers in a similar fashion that we are doing for pet owners across the board, and taking that more holistic approach because the people who are providing the services are working insanely hard, and they are grossly underpaid, and they're still showing up to try to just make sure that person in crisis is getting the help that they need. So helping those people have more tools at their disposal, I think, would be where I would start looking at that. And there's certainly a lot of layers to that, but just removing barriers and making things easier to access without jumping through a bunch of hoops or just being told no, that you can't ask that other organization for help because this is our client, this is our patient. Trying to tackle that, I think, would be where I would start.
So you guys know that I've had the chance, just through Social Venture Studio, not even through some of the other things we've done to work with 28 different organizations that are social entrepreneurs, social innovators, folks that are in the space. You guys are still, and probably forever will be one of my favorite examples of someone who's tackling a big, hairy ass problem that needs to be solved, but doing it in a way that is a sustainable business that is actually, it doesn't require or rely solely on philanthropy to get this done. And so hats off to you guys for really doing that. And thank you for doing that here in Kansas City and continuing to build the work here. I guess my question for you is, for those who might watch this, for those who might be listening, bestybnb.com, how do they get involved? How can someone support the work that you guys are doing to make sure this continues to scale and continues to positively impact not only humans but the animals that are their companions and pets?
Yeah, I would recommend, you can go visit mybestybnb.com or bestybnb.com. That's BESTY, B as in boy, N as in Nancy, B as in boy.com. And sign up as a foster home. If you can't foster, look at spreading the word to pet-loving friends and family in your circle. Or if you have any friends that work in social services, just make them aware of the fact that their organization can increase care to clients that they already serve. Because the common responses from our first responders, whether it's firefighters, police officers, case managers, client advocates, and intimate partner violence, on a weekly basis, this is something they all encounter. It's just something that there hasn't been a solution to. And so everyone may not be able to relate to a mental health crisis or intimate partner violence, but they can relate to not wanting to be separated from, an animal or a person or something that they love. And so, just, help spread the word there. And if you're a foundation looking to support such causes, we've got our nonprofit partnership set up with a national animal welfare organization. So we're actively pursuing grants to provide our services and expand and scale across the country at no cost to our social service agencies.
And if somebody wants to learn about that side of the program that you guys are standing up there, Matt, what's the name of that program that you guys have?
It's called Home Away from Harm.
Okay.
Yeah, so homeawayfromharm.org, and it's a pretty amazing, innovative model and structure that was also created here in Kansas City that'll benefit communities across the entire country, and we just launched that this summer.
Well, thank you guys again for being here and telling the story. I appreciate it. Thanks for what you're doing. I mean, I think in many ways I'm jealous. Our work is placemaking. It's bound by walls. It's bound by a district. It's bound by a lot of the things we're doing. You guys have this amazing ability to impact people that you'll never see, you'll never meet, you'll never know. You won't even know what cities they're in sometimes. But the scale of what you guys are doing is just fantastic. And I love to see social innovators, technologists that are solving really big problems. And so thank you for what you guys are doing.
Oh, thank
we,
you.
we appreciate the kind words. We appreciate all the support that you and your team continue to give us. And yeah, we're very proud to be doing it from here, and we're going to just keep going. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to come here and talk about it.
Awesome. Give them a hand, everybody. Besty BnB.